This is part 2 for the review of our lesson 3, Portales 1. So we were talking about adjectives, and as I said, adjectives describe people and places and things, and in this case we're talking about possessive adjectives. So possessive adjectives focus on the quality of ownership or possession. It also they are also used to talk about the relationships with other people, like for example saying my brother. I know that that doesn't really show possession because you cannot really possess someone, but the relationship that you have with that person, we're going to also use possessive adjectives, just like we do in English. Like when we say my mom, or my dad, or my father, my brother, my sister, my friend. So that's what we're going to use in this situation, and that's what we use in Spanish as well. The main difference in here is that we use singular form and plural form. So if we're talking about I possess, or one thing belongs to me, like let's say a book, I'm going to say mi libro. I'm talking about one book. If I'm talking about more than one book, like two or more, I'm going to say mis libros. Okay? Let's keep that example of the book. Tu libro, tus libros. Su libro, sus libros. Now you have to pay attention in here because su and sus is going to be used for several nouns, okay? For several pronouns. So you're going to you're going to use this for his, her, its, but also for your when we're talking about a group. So let's imagine that we have a pizza, right? I'm going to say mi pizza, my pizza. Tu pizza, your pizza. Su pizza, her pizza. Okay? However, we can also say su pizza, and that will mean his pizza, okay? Or its pizza, or your pizza if you are part of a group. So how do I explain that that is used for a group? So let's imagine that you have a bunch of friends and then you talk to your friends saying you all order some pizza, but that one has onions and I don't like onions, so this I know that this is not mine. This is not me pizza, okay? This is su pizza. Like this is y'all's pizza because ours didn't have any onions on it, okay? Now we're talking about our pizza that doesn't have any onions on it. We're going to say nuestra pizza, okay? So we're not going to be looking at the people that owns or that the people that is talking about the belonging, but we're going to match what comes next. So for example, in here, pizza in Spanish is feminine, so we're going to say nuestra pizza. It doesn't matter that the ones that are talking about this are men, but they are going to talk about a pizza, so that is going to be female, and they're going to say my nuestra pizza. Okay? This might be a little bit confusing, so I really suggest you to spend some time on this particular topic. And if you still have some issues, remember that there are tutoring services available, or you can ask me further questions if that is the case that you are struggling with this topic. Please let me know. Okay, so here we have an example how to use that the different ways for the possessive adjectives. So we're going to say mi primo, my cousin, mis primos, my cousins, okay? Singular, plural. Mi tía, mis tías. Nuestro primo, our cousin, nuestros primos. Nuestra tía, nuestras tías. And as you can see, the possessive adjective has to match what comes next. At the beginning, I gave you the example of book or pizza. And book is masculine. However, pizza is feminine. Okay? So if that is the case, I'm going to say nuestro libro, our book, or nuestra pizza if we're talking about something feminine. Okay? Let's go to 3.3. And in that one, we're talking about verbs ending in ER and verbs ending in IR. So we were talking already about verbs ending in AR in the previous units, and we are going to look at something very similar, okay? So we have these three main groups of verbs in Spanish. We have the ones ending in AR, which were, covered in previous units. Then we have the verbs ending in ER and IR. So they are usually put together because, as you can see, they share most of the conjugation. So as long as you remember how to do ER or IR, you will remember how to do the other because they share the conjugation. The only time or the only moment that you have to really pay attention if it's E or I, it's going to be with nosotros. Okay? As you can see in here is comemos, but in here is escribimos. So you have to pay attention there. So it's going to be yo como, yo escribo. Tú comes, tú escribes. So as you can see, this is highlighted in yellow because those are going to be the endings that you have to remember. To begin conjugation, with the conjugation, you're going to get rid of this ER from the verb, and we're going to be left with a stem, like in here. We get rid of this, and we have COM, and we're going to use it and plug in the ending, okay? You can see that COM is consistent all the way. Same in here. We get rid of IR, we keep the stem, which is consistent all the way, and we just plug in the ending, okay? That's the best, that's the way to remember how to do the conjugations in Spanish, because I know that might be challenging, so I really suggest you to make a list with the endings for AR, ER, and IR. And as soon as you know that, a lot of things are going to come easier for you. So, well, in here it's again telling you, that it's very important to identify patterns, which is going to make it easy for you when you want to learn how to do the conjugation in Spanish. And where I'm going to show you some of the common ER and IR verbs in Spanish. So, for example, in here we have, on the ER side, we have aprender, beber, comer, comprender, correr, creer, and so on. And on the IR side, we have abrir, asistir, compartir, decidir, describir, and so on. So when you have it in this way, you are saying an action, but you're not talking about anyone in particular. So for example, if you say beber, if you say just to drink, we're not saying that action is being performed by anyone in particular. However, if you say ella bebe, now I'm saying she drinks, okay? That's why it's important to conjugate the verb. I cannot say I to learn, you to run, she to eat. That doesn't make any sense. That's why we don't say yo comer, tú correr, and so on. We have to use the conjugation, okay? And finally, we have a couple of examples in here. Ellos corren en el parque. You can see they have the en ending. However, él escribe una carta. We have a different ending in here, just an E versus en, because he writes versus they run, okay? So you have to make sure that you look at the person that is performing the action and that you know who that person is going to fit in here before you look at the conjugation that you have to use. Or better said, that you look at the ending that you have to use for that particular verb. Okay? Now, our last topic, it's going to be present tense of tener and venir. So now that we talked a little bit about the endings of the verb conjugation for er and ir, it is important to talk about tener and venir. Tener means to have, and venir means to come. However, they have a little irregularity in the conjugation. That's why we're going to talk about them individually, okay? So in here we have tener that becomes tengo. So where did that G come from? I don't know. And sometimes, like we cannot really stop to look for where this came from because that's the way it is. Language sometimes works that way. Sometimes it seems not to have any sense, not to make any sense, but that's the way that we're going to that's the way that language works. So we have yo tengo, yo vengo. See that we are adding that G in there. Tú tienes, tú vienes. Now, what's the difference in here? That we are adding an I, okay? We are not keeping the stem like we were doing before. We are adding an I right there and right here and right here, okay? So we have tú tienes, usted, él, ella tiene, ustedes, ellos y ellas tienen. And same thing is going to happen with venir. Okay, so it is very important that you look at these particular verbs individually. Okay, so here again we're talking about how they become irregular, and instead of saying teno or veno, we have to say tengo and vengo, adding a G. We have some more examples in here and the conjugation, okay? Tener, tú tienes, ella tiene, and so on. So I really suggest you to look at the conjugation of those two verbs. And finally, just a few more examples. For tener, comer, venir, escribir. So we're going to see that we're keeping some of those endings as well in here. Now, why is it particularly important that we talk about tener? Because tener means to have, and that is a very common verb, just in general. But as well, we use that verb to talk about several expressions, okay? So in English, you say, I am 10 years old, but in Spanish, we're going to say, I have 10 years, okay? So I know that's going to be very different from what you know, in your language, in English. But those are expressions that are already made in Spanish, and that's the way that they work, okay? Tener calor. So it means to be hot. Tener cuidado, to be careful. So just imagine that this is the function of to be from those expressions in English, okay? But the difference is that they are they are going to use instead the verb tener, to have, okay? So obviously, whenever you want to conjugate this, you will have to make it match with the person. So in here, you're going to say, tengo 15 años. Tengo prisa. Okay, I am in a hurry. Tengo frío. I am cold. Tengo miedo. I am scared. So look at these expressions and review the conjugation of tener particularly.